windy, so sorry about the noise in the background. So this is the back of the cab. A little bit of rust here and here, but it's not through and through. It's still solid. A little crinkle here in the body, but otherwise, body's in pretty good shape. This tire has about a 1/4 inch of tread. A little bit of weather checking on the sides here. 10 lug wheels. Mirrors. I'm going to turn some lights on. So you got your dash lights in there. I converted most of the lights to LED, so the headlights are really nice LEDs. These lower lenses here, those don't work. I'm not sure if those are reflectors or if they're supposed to be lights, but these ones up here do work. That's your turn signals. I'll show you. Yeah, LED turn signals there in the front, and then all your lights in the back. These are just the old style lights, but all the corner marker lights on the flatbed I've got wired up correctly. Turn that off. Front of the truck, you've got a rock chip there, rock chip here, but no cracks. It's got both of these spot mirrors, or lights, sorry. The old style cop lights with the handle up here. So you can twist them and move them and aim them. I'm not sure if this one will turn on the key off, but so that's that. The front end doesn't have much damage at all. You've got a little crinkle in the bumper here where like that corner was pushed back a little bit. The reason we call it Howie, that's my son, he called it Howie, but that's the name of the brand. That was the fire apparatus that was installed in it. This front tire's got about the same as the other side, about a 1/4 inch of tread. The fuse box I was telling you about is up under here, kind of loose, just sitting here. It needs to be put in some type of box or some kind of permanent situation. It's not hurting anything, but brand new battery. Brand new battery, just purchased, what, 2 months ago maybe. I bought it to go with a 2008 V10, so it's appropriate for the motor. You see the exhaust Flowmaster effects. You've got your duals with the tips that just cut right out just behind the cab here. You got your dual cylinders for your lift. The seals are bad, so I don't know if these are replaceable. I've never made it that far, but those seals leak like a sieve on both sides. If you were to solve that, you wouldn't have to worry about it. It'll lift just fine. 2-piece drive line with the carrier bearing. That's the modern driveline I was telling you about. You've got a aftermarket yoke to adapt to this old differential. It's a 650 gear ratio on the rear. These are, I believe, a 39-inch tire. So with the overdrive and the automatic that I put in it, comes out to right about 2,500 RPM when you're cruising down the interstate at 70. So it actually is really just in its sweet spot when you're cruising along. And the fuel tank came out of the RV. These wires on top, that's going to be your fuel gauge. I have the gauge in the truck, I just haven't wired it up. This controller here is for the dump bed. I'll turn the key on here and you hear the pump run. Pump is brand new. I just installed this not even a year ago. It's out of fluid, so it's not going to lift, but you got your up and down on there. And that runs to the pump, which is up underneath the chassis here. I've got it mounted up under the truck, out of the way. It's all heavy duty wiring, and I bought brand new plumbing for it. It's got brand new hoses. The fuel tank came out of the RV, and I cut it and took 2 feet out of it. So I think it's huge. This stupid thing probably holds 60 gallons still. I topped it off before I brought it home from the storage place here in Arizona, so it's probably almost full still. This is just underneath the wheel well here. It's your steering linkage. You asked about whether the steering was still tight. Let me turn the lights on inside the cab here. So I put a bunch of sound deadening in the ceiling here, so it's a lot quieter in the cab. Steering, it's hard to show you what play is in it, but going down the highway, not a whole lot of play in the steering at all. This is the old fuse block. Honestly, could be thinned out tremendously. I'm not using hardly any of that. That was the old block for the fire truck apparatus for all the pumps and all that fun stuff. This is your OBD2 port. On the side, I have this tuner wired up to that at the moment. The tuner tells you speed, trans temp, coolant temp, battery volt. You can adjust this to be whenever you want. I've got it set up this way so I know how fast I'm going, what RPM I'm at, and watch the coolant temp to make sure it's not getting hot, which in my experience it hasn't. I've put probably 500 miles on it since I did the full rebuild of everything. So it still needs some time for shakedown to really make sure there's nothing going wrong, but every time I've driven it, starts right up, drives great. This visor's got a little separation to it. There's a ton of holes in the dash from all of the crazy stuff they installed. This big hole here is where they had a huge switch in the dashboard. I cut it square and I bought a touchscreen stereo to put in that spot. So it's cut to fit that perfectly. That square there, rectangle, was from another something, probably a radio at some point from when it was a fire truck. So that would need to be filled in. The floor is in good shape. It's got no carpet or anything, but there's no rust, no holes. The heater works really well. I'll turn that on here. So you hear the heater fan. That's defrost, and then there's a separate switch for the cab heat. You've got doors here that you can open to get really good heat going inside the cab, and the thing will heat you out. What else? You got a vent down there. That's what this vent switch up here on the dash is for. None of the gauges work up here on the dashboard, so unfortunately there's really no way to connect those. They're all mechanical, so the RPM and speed run off a cable. I'm running a fuel injected motor, modern motor now, so there's really no way to adapt it. Now on Amazon you can get a speedo that works off a GPS that would probably fit in that spot. RPMs you could tie into the OBD2 and run that way on that port down there. So there's ways around it. I was going to do that, but like I said, I'm not going to get to finishing it, unfortunately. So cab corners on the inside, just surface rust from it being sitting, but nothing that goes through. There's no leaks in the ceiling or anything like that. The shifter, my son bought me this shift knob because it's one of my favorite beers, Irish Death, and it still works for the automatic. I adapted the manual transmission shifter, so you've got your hit the brake, so you got reverse, neutral, drive, third, second, first. So I didn't do a gate for it. I was planning on it. My son was going to print me one on his 3D printer. So it probably could use a shifter gate so you kind of know where you're at, but really it's not complicated, right? Reverse, neutral part, or neutral drive. So that's the important part. And then starting, I'll fire it up for you. So it is cold. I haven't touched this in probably a week. I'll show you so you know it's chilly. I mean, my hand's right on it. It's been sitting for a minute. It's loud when it fires up and goes through the warm-up cycle. It rigidens it up, obviously, because it's cold. Then after a few moments, once it's warmed up a little bit, it starts to mellow out quite a bit. It's actually really not loud once it's warmed up. You can see the gauge here. RPM's about 1,000 right now because it's cold. You got 88 degrees, 14 volts on the battery. Charging system works great. It's a 14-foot dump bed. I'm gonna tip the cab up for you so you can see underneath it. When you tip the cab, it's easier if you open the doors because it gives you a little bit of extra weight. So you got your safety handles back here. You gotta reach in and pull. Better view of that fuse block I told you about. It's just sitting here. I haven't found a way to mount it. That's the original fuse block that came out of the RV. Coolant. That's a bottle out of a Super Duty truck, so it matches up to the capacity it's supposed to be. Radiator. This line on top is for the air conditioning pump, but obviously that's not hooked up because it doesn't have AC. It could have AC. I left the pump on the motor, so it's possible to run a condenser into the cab, and you probably could actually run air conditioning on this rig. It's definitely possible. I left all the parts to be able to do it. So there's your intake. Power steering. It does have power steering, which is nice because you wouldn't be able to turn this thing without it. Radiator. I put shock absorbers on it off of that RV, some Steins. So it helps the ride just a little bit, and the freaking thing is heavy. This relay runs all of the turn signal and brake lights. That's the main ECU down there, tucked away. This block here was an old fuse block that went into the cab of the RV, but there's nothing going off of it that needs to be hooked up, so it's just sitting there and never needs to be connected to anything in the future. Flatbed's in really good shape. Headache rack is pretty chintzy. It's all plywood. I'd suggest building some kind of better side racks for it. They're pretty pointless. Rear tires are in pretty good shape as well. You've got some old bias plies on here. They're old Goodyears. They're at 1020 is the tire size, but you got that 10 lug that's super common with any of the newer vehicles. Like I said, it's pretty easy to find a set of aluminum wheels for it. It's the lock for the cab there. So once you release that lock, the cab just drops into place, and then you've got two safety locks down here, and then this main locking handle to shut the cab. I'll go drive it a little bit for you so you can kind of see in here. It does have power brakes. It's got a vacuum booster system for the power brakes. That's back on the frame rail. So this is it when it's idling. Once it's warmed up a little bit, I'll rev it for you. Sounds pretty mean. So that's reverse, brakes, drive. The brakes actually are really strong. They're almost too strong. Kind of hard to get used to because they are very touchy. They work well. You don't have to hardly work them to make them stop. That's regular headlights. That's brights. It's got the old foot switch down there. So, like I said, park, reverse, neutral, drive, and then you've got 3, 2, 1. I'm gonna open up the door so you can hear it out here. And nice idle to it. Idling at 660 RPM. It's up to coolant temp 164, which is, it usually stays between 165 and 180. I've never had it go over 180. So hopefully that answers most of your questions. If there's anything else you need, feel free to reach out.